left corner, Andrea Gloria. You already met him at the opening of the course. He works at the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and is head of the Technical Operation Unit, Disarmament, Arm Control and Non-Proliferation Office. He is also our point of contact for the cooperation agreement with the Italian National Authority. And today he will have a talk on CBRN intelligence. So, Andrea, thank you so much for being here. We will have also his colleague, Davide Cutrino. He will join us online at the end of the presentation of Andrea, and Davide is working under the coordination of Andrea. So you will have Andrea in presence and Davide online in the second hour. See you later. Enjoy your lecture. Andrea, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Okay, good morning, everyone. We had the pleasure already to meet a few months ago. And so today we will speak in this first lecture about the CBRN intelligence. So what is happening before an event? So to prevent an event. So how to collect information, merge this information, and then prevent a possible event. Afterwards, my colleague will speak about the forensic. So after an event, what we can do to collect information to prevent further activities, criminal activities, terrorist attacks, I don't know, but afterwards, okay? So now we are before an event, afterwards we will be after the event. So I will sit for the registration and first of all, who is working in something related to Intel? Someone? No? Okay, so the aim of this presentation, as I mentioned, is to speak a bit about the intelligence. As you know, the intelligence has different components. There are many people working on different aspects to collect information. Then someone is merging this information, doing an assessment. The analysts, they are providing to the decision makers an overview of something that can happen or about a specific situation. So we will speak about the so-called components, collecting components of the intelligence. This is the military, more or less, but also the civilian intel is very similar. So sometimes they change the names or other things. And okay, and then we will understand the key factors that an analyst needs to take into consideration, and then the steps to develop a capacity, a CBRN capacity. So I will be focused on, this will be an overview about chem, bio, rad, and nuclear development of specific capacities. So, introduction. First of all, we are seeing in these last years, several events that in some way are connected with the CBRN issues. So I want to mention just two, Ukraine and Middle East. Who is from Middle East here? One? Oh, okay, so you can support, I remember. You can support me also about something if you want. So feel free to jump in the presentation. So Ukraine, what are the main issues in Ukraine related to CBRN? What are the CBRN threats in Ukraine? Sorry?
The atomic centrals.
Yes, so there are several nuclear power plants. There are risks of incidents. There is Zaporizhzhia that is the biggest in Europe, and is a big issue because also recently there were activities, military activities in the surrounding areas. Then there is Chernobyl, that we know Chernobyl from the past, and in February a drone hit Chernobyl, the reactor that is closed, there is a protection, and there were many activities done by the Ukrainian authorities. There is a mosquito, and this is also an issue. Then there are in this conflict involved waste, radiological waste depots. Also this is an issue, because if you target a radiological depot, you can have a release. Then other things. Yes, okay. It's a chemical, but all the explosives are chemicals. So in other cases, we will speak always about chemical, but yes, is an aspect. Use of riot control agents. I don't know if someone hear about this. Riot control agents are managed by the own. Every country can use for internal issues, like in the stadium. You can use. But if used in a conflict combined with conventional weapons, is forbidden under the Chemical Weapon Convention. In Ukraine, they are using. Who is not now the moment to speak about if it's Russia or it's Ukraine. There are investigations. There are recently EU started also new sanctions against Russia about this, but riot control agents have been used. There are accusations from United States and Ukraine about the use of chloropicrin, that is a chemical agent, Schedule 3 of the convention, that is forbidden. And so there are accusations that they found some evidence and ammunition used with inside chloropicrin. Then other issues, chemicals. There are, of course, is an industrialized country, so chemical facilities. If you target a chemical facility, you can have a release of chemicals. Then verification. My job with my colleague that is online is to do verification in the chemical facilities in Italy to be sure that they are managing our factories, they are managing chemical compound properly, that no one is taking scheduled chemical that can be used to make weapons. So in this case, in a conflict area, it's not possible to do inspections, what we are doing in Italy, for example, but in all the countries represented here. There are 193 countries that signed the convention, and all these countries are hosting periodically inspection from the Organization of the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. Okay? Then these are some of the issues in Ukraine. Okay? So we spoke about radiological, about nuclear, about chemicals, about bio. There are accusations of Ukraine that are saying that the Russian Federation is using toxins, so chemical agents of biological produced by biologicals. But I don't know. This is what they are the accusations. Okay, Middle East. My colleagues from Middle East. What are the issues in Middle East? Let's speak about Syria. There was used in the past, and the OPCW confirmed the use of sarin, of also other chemical compounds. The OPCW did investigations, and there are clear evidence that the Assad regime used chemical weapons, also in Iraq. Again, OPCW confirmed that the use of chemicals, in that case was sarin. Then, if you remember, there was the Beirut port explosion, was a clear evidence that the chemical compounds are not stored, managed properly. They were abandoned there. Ammonium nitrate, there was a big explosion. Then in the past, there were other issues about a nuclear program, and Israel, I will speak about many years ago, hit a reactor that they were building in Syria. Other things. Recently, Syria, you know, there are new authorities. They're very open to change from the past, but also there are clear evidence that there are still stockpiles of chemical weapons produced from the past. So now we don't know where are these stockpiles. The OPCW is reorganizing all the activities in Syria to be sure that these chemical weapons cannot be used in some other countries. And this is very important for the neighboring countries, Iraq, Lebanon, and Jordan, because the borders, there are smuggling activities. It's not easy also in Italy, everywhere to control the borders, and so this is a risk. If you have a country with chemical weapons, this can be moved, reach also Italy and be used. So this is another important aspect. Okay, and this is just to mention some. Then we could speak about Iran, about North Korea. So in this period, we have a very complex situation. And just to highlight some of the main issue, Syria, we just mentioned. The big issue is, and what intelligence is working to avoid, is that terrorist groups can acquire cyber materials or weapons or delivery systems. So this is the main threat that we are trying to face all the countries together. Because when we speak about cyber, the intelligence is sharing information worldwide, because an event in a country can affect another country far away. Okay? And then another aspect is the cyber know-how. Now you are here, for example, you are acquiring knowledge, we are learning. We don't know if maybe one day you are using this knowledge to be on the other side. No? Now we are the good people, in brackets, because depending also this, but on the other side, you can have someone else. The main concern about chemical, biologicals, and radiological dispersion devices is the capacity to deny and disrupt. What I mean, what is the difference about chemicals compared to bio? Question. The main, why a terrorist group should decide to use chemicals and not bio, or vice versa? Yes, this is a very important aspect. The knowledge behind the chemicals is easy, is medium, how can I say, diploma level. You don't need a degree, no?
To manage during the attack.
Yes, they're easy to manage. The effects are immediate. So if you want something fast, you have an immediate effect. The people can have consequence immediately. With the bio, you have delayed symptoms. With the COVID, we saw, no? When we were moving, there was a quarantine. We were staying in a place to be sure that we were not in contact before, and we were not having already the COVID for some reason. So this is one aspect. The
material availability.
Availability. Chemicals, I will speak about industries. There are tons of chemicals that every day are moving in Italy. Ammonia, chlorine, so going on the highways and moving. So you can acquire and use. Another aspect, here I'm mentioning deny and disrupt. For example, if you want to block an airport, what you release in the airport? You want to block, to create an economic issue in our airport in Fiumicino. You want to block, you want to create an issue for a long period. What you use? Chemicals, biologicals, radiologicals. Radiologicals? Yes. Because the chemical will be immediate. You decontaminate. The bio, you decontaminate. The radiologicals, you need the mechanical removal. And if you think about Chernobyl or other events, there were very long operations also in Fukushima to remove all the radiological material. This is an aspect. Here I'm mentioning as examples Tokyo, that was a subway. Everybody speak about Tokyo now is in the 80s, but in the 90s. But that was one of the first use of chemical warfare agents, SARI in that case, and anthrax, toxin, bio. But another effect is the so-called worried well phenomenon. So the people were not contaminated, but everybody were going to the hospitals. Also, in that case, you create a big issue because the health system is completely paralyzed. And also that is an effect. So depending on what you want, you can choose one or the other. And this is just a consideration that often we speak about weapons of mass destruction, but if you think about, you don't have destruction, just the destruction you have with the nuclear weapons. In all the other cases, you don't have a real destruction, but disruption, or you deny, is not the destruction. So, going back to the previous slides about the crisis worldwide, there is a clear issue now with the entire architecture. In the years, there were all the countries signed and agreed to manage cyber issues, signing this convention, the Chemical Weapon Convention, the Biological and Toxic Weapon Convention, other agreements like Australia Group. You can see other treaties signed related to delivery systems, nuclear non-proliferation treaty, the CTBT. I don't know if someone spoke about the CTBT, that is to control, to monitor possible nuclear test, and so on. And in the bottom, you can see the Proliferation Security Initiative, that is an initiative signed from many countries to avoid to interdict the chemical, biological, and radiological materials, mainly is maritime, but there are these initiatives. The Global Partnership, last year, Italy has the presidency. We also invited Tor Vergata to make presentations, some other organizations that are here today. And this is a G7 group, and Italy at that time, for 1 year, decided 5 priorities. One was the chemical safety and security worldwide. Another was the biological security with a special focus in Africa. Emerging disrupting technologies, all the technologies applied to the CBRN field. Counter proliferation financing, so how to block the money that in some way worldwide are going to support clandestine programs. And finally, the disinformation related to the CBRN that is putting in danger this architecture, because there are several websites speaking about countries that are not respecting the Bioweapon Convention, all the nuclear treaties, misleading the public opinion. So before and after Cold War, before everything was based on the nuclear, now we are in the post-Cold War era, where there are several regional conflict issues, asymmetric threats, and you can see what is changing mainly is the target of the intelligence. Before, we were monitoring countries having their own CBRN programs. No, the target was industrial scale military program. Okay, this was the focus of the intelligence. Now, step by step, we are going to the intelligence. Okay, so this was the target of the intelligence. Now we are here. So we can have countries developing CBRN weapons, but also, and mainly, we have terrorist organizations that are having their own lower technology programs. The intelligence, as I mentioned, is collecting information. Before, the collection was focused on maritime, land, and air. Now we have also cyberspace and space, and we will see why. So now the collection of the information are on these 4 physical and 1 functional domain. Globalization, we spoke a lot about globalization. Material moving, chemicals, bio, research activities, radiological sources used for devices, medical systems, All these things are going around every day. And now it's not clear who is the bad guy, who is the good guy. Okay? Where we are in the prevention. This is a slide from the NATO policy about approach to CBRN, and we are in the first pillar. All the activities to prevent the possible use of CBRN related weapons. Okay? Questions? This was just the introduction, I think. I'm too slow. I had to accelerate. Davide, are you online?
Hi, yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Oh.
I'm following you.
Okay. If you want to jump inside sometimes, tell me. No, not a problem. Or you just afterwards. Okay.
No, you are very good. You know.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, I go. Intelligence support to CBRN defense. Oh, sorry. So, as I mentioned, there are different steps in the intelligence: direction, collection, processing, and dissemination. So the direction is the phase that we analyze what assets we have. We have people on the ground. We have specific systems. We have drones so that they can collect imageries. So the direction is to understand what are our assets, and then we tell to them 1, 2, and 3. This is your job. You have to do this. This is, and then you do an analysis. Then you start the collection. The collection, there is a collection plan. All the assets, they have a specific task, and they will conduct these tasks to collect information. So usually, if you are focused on a specific group that you want to understand if they are developing chemical weapons, you will move all your assets. You will give a clear direction to your asset to confirm or not this issue. Okay? So there will be people investigating, there will be systems collecting info, there will be open source research, there will be many activities to confirm that aspect. The processing, after the collection, someone, the analyst, will process all this information, telling, yes, they're developing chemical weapons. What kind of weapon, what are the effects, and then the dissemination. So all this information, the intelligence report, the assessments, they will go to the decision makers, to the military units, to the policy, to react to the first question. Are they developing chemical weapons? Okay. I'm doing in a very basic way, but also I'm not an Intel, so it's easy for me to make basic approach. Information requirement. So in the first phase, we have request for information. Someone is asking information to the intelligence. And then you can have directly Intel processing. If you have already the info, you need just to collect all the info you have already to say, are they developing chemical weapons? You don't have the information. You have the assets. You tell to Andrea, Giovanni, and Francesco, please go collect information. I need to know if they're developing chemical weapons. Request for information. I don't have the information. I don't have the people. I ask to someone else, maybe to another country, can you check if these people are developing chemical weapons? Okay. And as I mentioned at the beginning, collection disciplines. We have several groups of activities, let's call in this way. And then you have the human intelligence, the open source intelligence, the signal intelligence, measurement intelligence, technical intelligence, imagery intelligence, medical intelligence, then there are also others. These are the main collecting components for the CBRN related report. I want to say, there is not CBRN intelligence. CBRN intelligence is not a component. CBRN intelligence is too complex to have just one collecting components focused on all the CBRN. So there will be all these entities, all these components collecting data that can be used to do a cyber intelligence report to have a precise and overall picture. Okay, but now we will see in detail. Human intelligence. This is the most common, the 007, the agents, no? Is the collection of data with the people that are on the ground, agents, interview to people arrested, depending on what situation you are, covert operation. So you collect all this data from people that are on the ground or in the virtual domain. Because also in the last years, also during the COVID, but also before, we started to work on the virtual human intelligence. So you don't need to have people on the ground, but you have people with the fake profiles. Like, you know, when you go on Facebook, there are many people with fake profiles, fake picture, and so on. What is the advantage of the virtual human intelligence is that one person can have 10, 15, 30 profiles. You can create in 10 years a profile, you can create a fake person with kids, with a family, posting picture, but everything is fake. And this was used in the past to enter in the jihad network, in the ISIS. So there were people infiltrated with these profiles, entering to understand the recruitment to manage terrorist activities. OSINT, open source. All information publicly available. There are on internet many things. Now we are using artificial intelligence. We go online, we find everything. So what is important is that you need to know what you are looking for. So if you are focused on specific, also when you ask to the artificial intelligence, if you ask the first time, then you add more details, the answer is very precise. And this is the open source intelligence. For example, the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute is an organization that we are working with in the cyber domain. And for example, they have online several databases, very important. Also, here is another website about all the ships moving in the Mediterranean Sea. And if you click on, you can see what ship is, from where, transporting what. These are all open source intelligence. And every ship, most are there. There are some clandestine or fake flags ships that are not there. But most is everything there, and you can use for your intelligence reasons. And here, just I put for the future, for yourself, website that you can read, you can go inside and check all the information that are here. It's very interesting. Imagery intelligence, so you can, from satellites, drones, and other assets, collect information. This information can be merged. You can have there are different techniques, and merging these techniques and overlapping these techniques, you can see the change on the soil. You can see the movements. You can see if there are production of radiological material, because there are technologies to see everything, and then putting all together, overlapping all together, you can understand what is going on. This is used mainly also for the nuclear power plant or nuclear programs, but in general for all the cyber related collection activities. Here there are some products from the EMINT, and again about the nuclear power plants in other countries. Technical intelligence, to collect information about performance and new programs from other countries. And then signal intelligence, communication intelligence, electronic signal intelligence. So you you check all the communication, all the radio communication, all the data that are under the SIGINT. The MASINT, measurement and signature intelligence, that are very important for the nuclear test. And also this is a dual use tool, because these are not all nuclear tests, because all these red spots are not nuclear tests, are earthquakes. So depending on what you see, you understand if it's a nuclear test. If there is a nuclear test in North Korea, we will see, and there will be many stations collecting this data. But in this case, these are earthquakes, and then you can see the plactonic, la placca tettonica, plactonic, come si chiama? Tectonic plate. And you can see here, no, where there are these frictions, okay? And for this, the CTBT is the treaty that is very important, signed by many countries. Not implemented yet, but is another very important aspect for the nuclear activities monitoring. Medical intelligence focus on infectious diseases, bioterrorists. Why, how MEDINT can understand if there is a biological clandestine program, if there are specific strange outbreaks that are not expected in specific areas, or if there is a peak compared to the natural number of casualties. These warnings can activate the medical intelligence that is starting to collect more and more information to understand if these are natural outbreaks or if there is something behind. Just few examples. This is 2012 in Germany. There were cases of anthrax, intelligence assets that were working to understand what was happening. At the end, there were anthrax spores in the heroin from Afghanistan, because they were produced on the ground without specific safety measures, specific procedures. So these spores, they were with the heroin, and the people they were injecting. So we had cases in Germany, you can see fatalities and cases with the people that were self-injecting anthrax using the heroin. And another case, enterohemorrhagic Escherichia coli outbreak, also this is in Germany in 2011. This is the cluster analysis to understand the patient zero, the first person. In this case, there were investigation to understand if it was a terrorist attack, but the problem was low measures in the protocols of a company that was producing soy, and this created also big issues, because at the beginning there were accusations against Spain about the production of cucumber, and there was an economic issue for Spain, and the problem was inside Germany of a specific company producing something else. So this is just an example. So the intelligence at that time was working hard to understand what happened. Some considerations on the intelligence. Complex intelligence policymaker relationships. Often the politics is asking to the intelligence to have clear answers, like what is happening in the next few weeks in that country. The intelligence cannot prevent decisions that are not even taken, okay? So can give an assessment to the decision makers. High expectation of the intelligence to produce a precise pictures. is a tool to support the decision makers. Risk of deception, of course, complexity to access small programs, and I told you a big program in a country is different compared to a clandestine little program of a little group of even of one person in a country. In Germany, there were many cases of people producing rising, not many, but there were a few cases. In Europe, there were cases of people producing toxins and arrested that they were lone wolves, so single persons that they were doing this. And then bias inclinations. Concerning the bias, this is something that they teach to the intelligent analysts to avoid to do mistakes. Because if you are used to something, you can see, you can see that in your making consideration that are not necessarily true. Mirror imaging, you use your culture to assess something, but is wrong. So if you think that you are in a country and they will react in a specific way based on your knowledge or your culture, is wrong. You need to contextualize this with that country. We have here a colleague from Middle East, from other countries. Of course, you're Dutch. In the Netherlands, they are different. In other countries, are different. So we have, and in Europe, maybe we are more similar, but Dutch and Italian are very different, no? So I was living in Germany for years. We are very different. So it's very important. Then subordination of intel to policy. One case study very important is Iraq, if you remember. In Iraq, they were accusing Saddam Hussein that was developing WMDs. No evidence at the end. And this is a case study used even in the US, what not you shouldn't do. Okay? Because in that case, the intelligence was making, pushing the policy and the international community to react with the excuse of the WMDs. Failure of analysis is possible, underestimation, we will see some example, lack of communication, and lack of intelligent professionalism. Just to highlight some consideration before the next topic. So the intelligence is a key enabler for all prevention. Monitoring and limiting clandestine efforts is very important, we said. And then the collection and evaluation, analysis, interpretation of the data are fundamental altogether to prevent the use of weapons of mass destruction. Okay? Let's do a short break, 30 seconds, for your questions. Then we will go to what is the cyber-related intelligence? Questions? Okay, break finished. I say 30 seconds. I'm not joking. No, we finish. Then I will give you 10 minutes and then I will pass the floor to the other colleague. Okay? Was 30 seconds to drink and to speak. So, cyber-related intelligence, as I said, is not a component, is a report. So all the collecting components, they are taking pieces, like in a puzzle, they put all together. Someone is preparing a report telling Andrea Gloria in his own house, in the basement, is producing toxins. So all of them, there is someone that saw me buying stuff, someone looking online, someone else, I was in contact with an expert for the production of toxins, someone else checked my profile and I was studying biologist in the past. So this is how it's working. Okay? The key factors when you do a report on cyber intelligence, focus on a group or a country are this: ideology, motivations, and intentions. Why someone wants to develop W&Ds? What capabilities, cyber capabilities they have already, if they have, maybe they are developing. The history. There are countries or groups that already in the past they used or they were doing research activities, or in that country they were, like in Syria, for example, now we were mentioning before, there is a history. They were experts working in the programs, in the chemical weapons program. These people, they have expertise. Cultural aspect, in some countries is acceptable to use chemical weapons. In other countries, no. Current events, if there are uses in the last years of chemicals, or toxins, availability of resources. Sometimes someone was telling chemicals are very easy available. Availability of cyber material, availability of technologies. Countries that didn't sign the international treaties, research and developments, relationships. There are countries that they don't have capacity, but they're in contact with other countries. They are acquiring weapons directly, delivery systems, knowledge. Okay? Why is important to give warning? This is an example, a missile. We need to do everything before. Before an attack, we need to prevent the delivery of this warhead somewhere. No? So we need to block. How? There are indicators. So before this, before the launch of the missile, there are indicators something is happening. Someone is moving the delivery system. Someone is putting the warhead. Or people communicating. Let's activate the systems. There are communication or maybe people moving. We are targeted that area, move from there. All these things are indicators. Okay? And here two examples. This is Per Albur from the movie. If you remember, in the movie there was a guy telling, I think Japan will attack. There are indicators that they're moving and so on. Someone else say, no, it's not possible. This is one of the bias that I mentioned before, one of the mistakes, underestimation. Another case is 9/11. In 9/11, there was a competition. There are US representatives, you know. There were agencies, national security, and other agents that were not communicating. Someone knew that something was happening. There were some plans, something they didn't share. This is why after 9/11, they changed the structure of their own national security. So just to highlight that there are always indicators. Our task is to understand what indicators are preventing an event. With this slide, I want just to highlight that there are capacities. States, they have big capacities. They have facilities. They have population. They have knowledge. No state actor, they have little capacities, but depending. There are also examples at the end. In the closing, I will mention one group that in the past had huge capacities. State-sponsored terrorist groups, these are terrorist organization with the intent of the terrorist organization, but with the supported with the capacity of states. This is the most dangerous situation because they have the intent and they have in some way the capacity of a state. And then there are the lone wolves that are single people that want to maybe to destroy the entire world. There are. What the difference you can see here. These are real picture from Interpol. States capacities, the chemical weapon program of Russia in the past. This is the chemical weapon program of Aum Shinrikyo in Japan, the one that carried out the attack in Tokyo subway. And these are lone wolf from I don't remember in what country, someone that was developing some chemical weapon. And so to prevent, we need to analyze all the steps before a possible attack. What are these steps? Feel free. I'm a group. I want to do an attack. What can be the steps? And if you understand the steps, we can go back to the indicators to prevent that step. Question? Proposal? Comments? Yes. You need to develop, to acquire, if you want an expert, if you want a material, if you want chemicals, you have to take. You have to buy. It's not for free. No one is giving you anything for free, no? Then, what?
Communication.
Communication? Yes, that at the beginning there is a before, of course, no, in all the steps there are communication. If you with the SIGINT, with the comment, you monitor a group and you will see that are saying something. Maybe they're speaking about a chemical compound or something specific. Then money, yeah, flow of money, yes. Acquiring resources can be equipment, can be safety equipment, protection equipment, can be the chemicals, can be radiological sources from an hospital. You can steal, you can buy, you can develop, you can produce with a chemical. Sorry?
Strategy.
A strategy. This is the first step, a decision. What do we want to do? We want to use radiological material in the airport. We want to use chemical in a mall. What is the intent of this group, let's say? We want something immediate. We want something long term. Our dream is to have a big outbreak worldwide against, I don't know, the something specific region. Sorry? Test. The test before the target, the use. Usually you do a test to be sure that it's working. In the sarin attack in Tokyo, they were not testing properly. They did some tests, 3 tests, but the sarin was not so good. This is why there were not so many casualties. Now, there were many casualties, but not many people died. Other things? Acquisition of knowledge, like the decision at the beginning, then acquisition of knowledge. Do I have the knowledge? Yes. No, I had to study. Okay, I call this guy that was working in the program somewhere else, or the maximum expert of I don't know what.
Target. Decision of the rule.
Acquisition of the target, surveillance of the target. I want to attack that barracks, and so I will do a surveillance activities. I will monitor that there are people guarding the border. I want to enter. I don't want to enter. I want to use another building over this bar. I don't know. Surveillance. Yes. Acquisition. The rule. From okay, from the target. Yes, it's connected. Yes, if I want to attack a group, a country, or an army or something, what are the procedures that they can use to avoid, to make my plan not reaching the point I want? So, analysis of the rules of engagement. Yes. Yes, same. The procedure that they're using. Yes, relationships with other countries, and so you analyze not the group but the other country. If we know that there are connections with a specific country, what capacity at that country, what is the int of that country that stabilize the other countries, or maybe there are connections. We go back on the state-sponsored terrorist groups. Yes, that is the surveillance, the monitoring, maybe a weak point or a specific, there are elections, I don't know. I want to, and so you know that is a sensible period when there are elections. Okay? So these are just examples. So here you can see some of the things that you mentioned. The decision, recruitment or train, acquisition of equipment, of material, the weaponization, the test, moving the material near the target, the dispersion. So we are here. We want to avoid this. And all these steps, they have indicators with these triangles. So if we collect many data and we see that there are several indicators in this phase, we can understand that this group is in this phase, is still in a phase acquiring material to develop. But if there are indicators already with the delivery and so on, we are close, we have already a capacity. Afterwards, the attack happened, and so we have the forensic. My colleague will speak about the forensic. What to do after to avoid other attacks or to understand who carried out the attack. And my colleague will speak about some of the aspects that you take into consideration with the forensic. If you have a plan, any plan, you want to produce botulinum, anthrax, Buicks, all of them, they have their own pathway. The approach is valid for any kind of production. This is an example of strategic indicators of war that they were used by US and Russia for both to understand if they were ready to use nuclear weapons during the deterrence. A bit we are going back on this, unluckily. But you can see, you can read what are the indicators if something is happening. In this case, more focus on the use of nuclear weapons. And then last slides about specific indicators on nuclear programs, recruitment, training, research and development, focus on nuclear technology, evacuation of people before an attack, rhetoric from the leadership, delivery systems, specific components, acquisition of uranium, acquisition of specific material that you need to develop a weapon, ballistic missile, test of ballistic missiles because they are used to deliver nuclear warheads, infrastructure developments. These are some of the indicators. When you collect data, there are hundreds of indicators, and these, they confirm each other. So having several indicators, you can understand what is happening. Same logic, same approach for the development of radiological dispersion devices. And you can see what can be an indicator. Acquisition of material, activities, For the bio, acquisition, production, recruitment, researches on internet, and so on. But I will be a bit more focused on the chemicals, due also to our work in the National Authority for Chemical Weapon Convention. So, specifically, these are pictures from, I think, Alabia in Iraq. What are the indicators of a chemical weapon program? Recruitment, training, know-how, researches, use of precursors or procurement, specific equipment. Some of you said about the equipment you need to manage properly specific components or compounds. Testing, accidents. Sometimes when you develop something, you have an accident. Someone go to the hospital, contaminated, and you understand that this person was doing something forbidden. No? Testing, unexplained case of contamination. And mainly on the industrial side, what we are doing, inspecting facilities, chemical facilities. Here are what we check that for us is an indicator that something is wrong. So modified equipment, modified reactors, extreme resistant reactors that are not needed for that kind of production, filters that are not needed, equipment, protection equipment that are not needed, antidotes, labels with different languages. And we know that this factory is buying stuff from Germany or from the Netherlands. And then there are material from some other countries. This is the triangulation, maybe something acquired from another country. Traces of not declared chemicals. In some inspection, we do samples in the labs and we check what there is inside. If there is a trace of a chemical that is not in the list of the things that are processing, is an indicator. International discrepancies. We merge with all the countries that have signed the convention, 193 countries, discrepancies. And sometimes, a few days ago, I received a discrepancy from India telling we don't understand because we are saying that we exported this, or you are saying that you imported it. There is a discrepancy. So we check with the country, often are mistakes, that some tons of material is not lost somewhere. So the discrepancies also. Lack of declared chemical compounds. We were expecting 10 tons of tetratolamina, and then we find 5 tons. Where are other 5 tons? These are precursors. So, and then presence of dispersion device, but there are hundreds of indicators. Finally, any government cannot work alone on the cyber-related matter. This is why there is a strong cooperation among all the countries on W&Ds and CBRN activities, with all the countries. Most. You can see some considerations, few other considerations. And finally, as conclusion, I want just to highlight and apply this approach to the group Amshrenigio. So I showed you the approach. Amshrenigio was a group in Japan. 60,000 people joined this group. You can read. Because we speak about this, if I think about maybe there are 10 sfigati, so 10 people that were doing an attack in the subway. No. 60,000, 300 scientists, 1 billion of money because they were asking to the people money to support the cause. At the beginning, they started to try to acquire nuclear technology from the Soviet Union. At one point, an entire nuclear weapon. They wanted to use a nuclear weapon. Probably the Soviet Union at that time understood that maybe it was not good. Then they tried to do a nuclear facilities. I don't have the details in Australia. They send people in Africa to take Ebola. So they started with the nuclear, then they started with the bio, Ebola, to spread the Ebola somewhere. Then with the botulinum, anthrax, at the end, the sarin. And the sarin, thank God, was very low quality. And they made all the steps. So I did this when I was in the NATO school with a colleague from US. And we were analyzing all the information we had from this group, Auschwitz. And here you can see all the steps, and at that time, what could be the indicators to prevent. Japan was not able to prevent, unluckily. And it's very strange also because they were tests. They tested the sarin in 1993, 1994, 1995. These are real pictures of their delivery systems. You can see they were planning also to have trucks to deliver. A test was on a building in Tokyo, another I think in a suburb, I don't remember. But they were tests. And the Japanese authorities, they were not able to prevent the attack in the subway. Finished. So I try to be no fast because I took 1 hour exactly. And so was just to explain you very, very fast the approach of the intelligence to prevent the possible use of chemical, biologicals, radiological material, and nuclear weapons. Okay? Feel free to ask if you have some comments or if you have any questions. Thank you. Domande? Questions? Comments? Do you agree? One question.
This kind of intelligence follow the military in total, or it's the same? Yeah.
I'm a military, now working the MFA. This is the approach of the intelligence in general. Is mainly military, but it's also like CBRN. CBRN was created in the military. No? Who was creating the first chemical weapon? The military. So the approach is very military in the CBRN defense, the component, the protection, the detection, identification. We have colleagues from the civilian agencies, firefighters, police, but the approach is more or less the same. The protocols, they change in case on an event, but the national security, the military intelligence, they are similar and they work even together. In our case, in Italy, the military intelligence is more focused on the other countries abroad. The national security, the secret service, they are more focused, or the national agencies are focused on the national security. But there is a merge, of course, because the CBRN, we say it is a transnational issue. And so there is, of course, a cooperation between the military and the civilian. And many aspects are not exactly the same, but very, very well connected. Questions? You want to ask something? No. Okay. So, Davide, are you online?
Yes, I am. Here I am. Very good. Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we can give 5 minutes just for them to take some fresh air, and then to speak. How is only this the audio?
Do you hear me?
Can you hear him?
Yes, I hear you very well.
Me, because I'm close to you, but I don't know the last people in the last row.
I will try to raise the level of the microphone.
1 second. Okay, so these are technical aspects. So 5 minutes and come back. Thank you. Allora, un attimo che provo a...
Loro sentono?
Sì, però quelli dell'ultima fila poco.
Ok. Ho il livello al
Devi,
massimo
al-
del mio.
devi alzare la voce quanto più puoi e poi ora
Ok.
prova a fare lo screen sharing.
Allora, faccio lo
Io
sharing.
esco.
Aspetta,
Esco.
condividi.
Ah, c'avevo i video, non li
Vedi
ho fatti vedere. Vabbè.
Aspetta. No, c'ho ancora il tuo.
Colomba, senti?
Sì,
Allora, prima domanda, per l'audio è soltanto il microfono del computer?
sì, è il microfono del computer.
Ok, però a te ti sento più forte, vedi? Quindi Davide devi provare a avvicinarti magari di più al tuo microfono e
Ok.
magari esce un po' più
È
forte.
perché sì, c'ho sulle cuffiette. Aspetta, allora intanto provo. Lo vedete lo schermo? Intanto?
Sì,
Sì,
perfetto.
Perfetto. Benissimo. Allora, adesso vado con le, come si chiama? Allora, microfono, allora, dispositivo, cuffia, microfono già. Provo questo. Mi sentite meglio così?
Sì, molto meglio.
Va
sì,
benissimo.
Davide, va benissimo così.
Ecco, ho cambiato il microfono così è quello della telecamera anziché quello delle cuffiette che sto usando. Benissimo. Vedete la presentazione nel frattempo, giusto?
Sì, se la metti in presentazione, aspetta, forse la devo mettere io. No, non è in presentazione. Mettila poi in presentazione.
Sto condividendo la finestra qui. Aspetta, interrompo la condivisione, riprovo a condividere.
Ah, ora ti vedo
Presentazione,
la faccia, quindi
consenti.
quando inizia, ecco,
Ecco,
perfetto. Ora si vede sia la faccia.
perfetto?
Perfetto, ora sì.
Bene, bene, ottimo.
Ok. Ma tu mi vedi a me?
No, adesso vedo solo la mia
Ok,
presentazione.
ok.
Adesso vedo solo la mia
E
presentazione.
io, Davide, ti lascio
Adesso blocco
iniziare.
la webcam. Ecco, stoppo la webcam giusto per non avere per il flusso dei dati.
Ok, poi
Adesso dovreste vedere la presentazione,
sì,
giusto?
sì,
Presenting author. Ok.
sì, non la vedo completa sullo video, però va bene anche così, vero Colomba?
Sì, sì, si vede
Questa è la
bene.
prima slide.
Oh,
Sì, sì,
perfetto.
sì, si vede perfettamente.
Perfetto.
Benissimo,
E
benissimo.
quindi Davide, se
benissimo.
vuoi farti vedere la faccia quando inizi, poi la puoi togliere così c'hai meno dati da trasmettere e
Ok,
poi io ti lascio iniziare, magari se vuoi ti introduco io
ok.
e poi ti lascio la parola e poi io mentre inizi a parlare poi me ne vado che ovviamente in ufficio ci stanno le 8
Eh sì,
milioni di
sono
cose.
giornate abbastanza intense. Dai.
Abbastanza intense, esatto. E basta, dai.
Perfetto, perfetto. Vediamo se con
Dovrebbero
l'ascoltatore si
arrivare fra pochi
sente.
minuti.
Sì, sì, tanto non è una problematica. Ok, ecco. Bene, bene, dai. Ci siamo.
Andava bene la
Blocco la
presentazione?
scheda. Com'è? Oh, era meravigliosa.
Ti
Bella,
piace?
infatti. No, ma sei sempre molto chiaro e molto discorsivo. Va benissimo, è perfetta. Poi dopo, se non capiscono, è una problematica dell'utenza, però in realtà è molto bella e molto fatta bene.
Sì,
Assolutamente sì, devo dire.
magari anche un po' semplicistica, però è proprio per far capire il messaggio, se no.
È quello che si può dire a livello unclassified, è quello
Mm, mm.
giusto, è perfetto, è il livello. Poi chiaramente se uno entra in agenzia o in altre situazioni approfondirà.
Sì,
Però è perfetta anche per collegarsi a quello che è dopo l'attività
il
forense, cioè
forense.
se non c'è un'attività di intelligence, non c'è l'attività forense. E l'attività di intelligence può essere trasformata in attività forense e viceversa.
Esatto, sì, questo infatti poi lo dice. Ma qua ci abbiamo degli stranieri, abbiamo la polizia olandese, poi vedo qualcuno dei vigili del fuoco, qualcuno degli Emirati, e poi qualcun altro penso del Middle East, non lo so. E Che altri paesi ci sono presenti?
Li hai elencati tutti, quelli che
no,
ci
su
sono
questi solo?
di primo livello, sì.
Bene, bene.
Ok,
Ciao Colomba,
Ciao Davide, buongiorno.
buongiorno.
ok.
E Andrea,
Aspettiamo.
visto che tu vedi l'aula, mi dici tu quando potete cominciare, se sono tutti
Sono poco
presenti.
disciplinati, ce ne ho 4 qua. Mo lo dico a Sabrina
Magari sì, se dici a Sabrina di fare da butta dentro.
ma anche lei manca, quindi mo cazzo anche lei allora.
Ok.
Se mi autorizzate. Mi chiamate in fuori? Grazie. Il collega di Rieti sollecita il rientro. Ok. Davide, poi tu rientri il 3?
Il 3, sì, sì.
Ok. Io il 2 parto,
Sì, no, ma comunque ci sentiamo quando vuoi, nessun problema. È che adesso faccio da autista e da badante sostanzialmente,
No, lo so, lo so.
quindi stamattina ho
Occhio
portato
che
gli
sta
esami del
registrando
sangue
qua.
e l'esame di controllo. Eh?
Colomba sta registrando tutto.
Ah, ok.
Eh sì,
E-
perché è un'unica lezione la vostra, quindi
sì, 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 sì.
Allora ci sentiamo dopo per i dettagli.
mi sa che è
Sì, sì.
meglio, dai.
Tranquillo, tranquillo. Ok. Ok, guys. I think we should start. Half of the class is missing. Ok. Dai, 2 minutes and we start,
Bene.
Anche perché Colomba il tempo, io ho preso un'ora piena per essere un po' in ritardo, quindi quanto c'ha Davide? Fino alle?
Fino alle 11 avrebbe Davide.
Quindi
Benissimo,
già
benissimo.
siamo
Lo faccio
40,
bastare, nessun problema.
40 minuti, quindi 2 minuti, poi
Va benissimo.
alle 10:20 iniziamo in modo che
Assolutamente, sì.
c'è 40 minuti pieni, perché di cose da dire so che ce n'è tante. E quindi, anzi, io ho fatto un focus sul chimico, puoi pure parlare proprio dei training con l'OPCW, che magari è un po' più su cose più pratiche per loro. E poi basta, direi.
Bene.
Qualcosa?
No, no, grazie. Dai. Ora inizio, poi vado, fuggo.
Ma
Un minuto inizia, fra un minuto esatto.
Volevo fare
Ok, please, we start. Okay, so as I mentioned now, I will pass the floor to Davide Cutrino from the same office. We are working together. He couldn't manage to come today, but is connected. And going back to my presentation, he will speak about what is the role of mainly law enforcement, but in general the forensics after an event, and then he will tell you details. He's an expert of these activities. Is also instructor in several trainings on forensic, and just in 2021, I think, as national authority of the Chemical Weapon Convention, he developed with other colleagues from the Carabinieri, from the Italian Gendarmerie, a specific curricula in line with international protocols on forensic, and Iran, he will tell you details many times for several countries. Thank you, Davide. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I will just continue essentially the speech that Andrea was speaking about the intelligence, because the forensic is the natural prosecution of the intelligence if we want to present the case in front of a judge or an international court. I will start with, I will share the presentation. Okay. And so we start just to introduce myself a little bit and the work that the Carabinieri does on Italy concerning the CBRN event and intelligence and also
Davide,
prosecution activity.
Se vuoi rimuovere il video, rimuovilo così magari si sente meglio l'audio.
Ah, ok, giusto. Aspetta. Ok. Disattiva. Perfetto. All right, sorry for this inconvenience. So the Carabinieri is structured with a criminal investigation section that has a particular section. Here you see the third section. That was the section I was used to command before to approach to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And there is a section in every region that is being split the Italy. In particular, and speaking about the Emilia-Romagna, with this unit located in Bologna. As you can see here, you can have a crime scene investigation for the common crime and the murder and everything, the counter-narcotics laboratory, and the CBRNE and counter-IED unit, essentially what they call EOD expert. But being a law enforcement agency is not just an EOD that comes, destroy, fix the situation and go back, but it will complete from the beginning. That's mean the intervention, the intelligence at the beginning, the intervention, the dismantling of the event, the clearing of the event, and then the investigation and the court approach. We will see here how we'll speak about what we are speaking when we are dealing with CBRNE material, essentially. So we have the standard material that can be CBRN or can be explosive, so standard material, very well known and described in all the manual for everything that is warfare or not warfare, also for civilian and industrial approach. Then we have something that is modified. So we can have this kind of material that is well known that can be used for other material, with or without explosive. On the left part, for example, you will see some dispersal device. That means that are used to put toxic or chemical or biological material on the air without the use of explosive, just a dispersal device. Then everything can be also used in a mix and can be hidden. That's what it means, that something that look like a standard device can be modified in order to contain an insidious threat and not immediately detectable threat. This is what we are specialized in Carabinieri for this kind of event. That's been EOD, IED, and BC incident management. In Italy, they're essentially the firefighters are the first intervention team. But if they are supposed there is something that is not an incident, like a truck that make a car incident, a tank that is making an incident or something like that, we are working together in order to maintain the legality and maintain the event under the rule of law. There is the post-blast exploitation, the bomb search support, scientific investigation support, counter-terrorism investigation support, SWOT support, CBRN forensic investigation that we are speaking about today, CURT and forensic support, EOD, IAD, or CBN awareness. In a detail, these are some pictures of the material, those are old, but the units are structured in a different way with the new materials. What you are seeing, for example, is a whole drone that in the past was moving just itself just by remote control, by radio signal. Right now we can move them also by satellite signal. That means the operator don't have even to stay in the same area where the drone is. So we are using new technologies. As they are using new technologies in terrorism, we are using new technologies in counterterrorism. Here is a kind of post-blast exploitation and scientific investigation support, because we are rebuilding, analyzing, and in a forensic way, all the material that we are finding. That means that we are trying to have a not destructive approach on the material that we are dealing with. Also, that's something different respect, for example, to an EOD team, a standard EOD team from every country that has the first idea is to eliminate the threat. We are trying, yes, to eliminate the threat, but in a not destructive way. And we are taking much more evidences in this way. Here on the left, there are some internal terrorism, domestic terrorism, like anarchist group. And here, even anarchist group, but not only, just robbery from the ATM machine using the explosive and other chemical device. Then we have the CURT and forensic support in order to demonstrate exactly what happened and why it happened. On the left side, we had what at the beginning they were supposed to be a terrorist extracting explosive from old remnants, old devices, but instead he was just a collector that was trying by himself, not knowing what it was doing, and it was dying in doing it. And on the left side, the right side, we have a rebuilding of the material that was used, the anarchist group were used to send all over Europe to different agencies, offices, law enforcement, or other offices. Then we have the bomb search support that we were developing, also using the K9 units, and we were using the same techniques in Italy as abroad, and with a lot of good results. That we have the counter-terrorism investigation support for several other things, because by law there is different agencies they have the mandate in order to investigate on the terrorism groups, and depending on which they are and which level they have. On the left side, for example, we have the Carabinieri barracks attempt that thanks to this, the way of we approach, as you can see, we fixed the device and we didn't let it explode, and we saved all the components. Thanks to this result, we were able to extract DNA and fingerprints of one of the most important and look at the terrorists that we had in Italy. You can check quietly because now everything has been done, and is the famous Cospito that is in jail for life. And here some example of what they have done, attacking the army on the right side and the Carabinieri barrack even. Here, just some picture about the EOD, IAD training, study and research with different agencies and with different law enforcement gendarmeries all around the Europe. And here some special activities that we've developed for OPCW, for example, concerning and with our center of excellence in Italy, that they were studying for all the Italian law enforcement agencies and army and armed forces this system with us. So what is consisting? Is consisting in maintaining all the intelligences collected during the army work and transforming them in something that can be useful for the court. That's been some evidence. So a data that is come from the intelligence, not always is something that can be used on the court, but in a way that we worked with, we can transform an intelligence correctly manipulated and correctly used in an evidence that can be useful for the court, not only an internal court, that's been for the state that we are investigating on, but for an international court. That's something that's good. On the left side, for example, you can see a visible fingerprint and latent that has been discovered in severe and in a contaminated environment, but we could not examine it and not extract it because it's contaminated, but we could have examined it inside the area, exporting with multimedia devices in order to be inserted in the correct system and analyzed in the labs. So it becomes an evidence, not more an intelligence, and not more something that we could lose during our job and our activities. Here we shall have a little, let's see, okay. This is an activity that we developed thanks for a project with Europe, counterterrorism Middle East project that we developed with the Iraqi in these the Iraqi persons, Iraqi law enforcement. This is Vicenza, that's the Gendarmerie Center in Vicenza. And we developed everything from the beginning and to the end of an investigation with several paths, with several activities. That was the COVID period, so that was a little difficult, and some part was made also online, not in real life. But we were able to make 15 days on real life and on the exercise on the field. So as you can see, for the CBRN activity, you have to wear the proper garment for double reason. One, the first is to protect, obviously, in a contaminated environment, but it allows you also to maintain the sterility of the area and to collect all the evidences that you can with a police standard that can be really correct and available for the court. For example, like collection of DNA or collection of latent and all the material that could be useful. Here is the specialized EOD team, specifically wearing the PPE that are essential in a contaminated environment. Here there was an explosion with a dispersion of little vials containing chemical substance. You see with the instrument, and then the check and the verification of for the safety of the personnel with everything. And here they start the preparation. That's been a coordination with the Intel and with all the agencies inside, explaining what happened, collecting all the data that can be interesting for an investigation in order to let the equipe also know what is good to collect in the million of evidences that they can find in a contaminated environment. Because in a contaminated environment, you have a really few time that you can stay in the area. It's not like you seize an house and you can go in and out for hours, days, or even weeks. You have a limited times because after you have to clear the area and eliminate the threat. So you have to know exactly and perfectly which are the right material to be collected. And also there is a different way for the collection in order to do not bring the contamination away from the area that has been already contaminated. The hypothetical line, you see the decontamination material, and you see how many envelope in order to seize the material to bring outside the area. Here is just an example on how this kind of techniques that are commonly used in a way, they can be used also in a contaminated environment. Here has been done not just for example and for the movie example, but the analysis, for example, of a fingerprints of a latent, if taken in a proper way and with a proper instrument, with some powder that is not reacting with the contaminated agent that is inside the area, can let you have a very excellent result that can be useful and can be bring in front of the court. Here is just because I'm not speaking about something that is not real. This is a suspect anthrax mail that the court prosecutor in Bologna was receiving in 2022. So the CBRNE team that is composed anytime, as I said before, in Bologna, in the Emilia-Romagna, with carabinieri and firefighters, they were approaching the area, and on this particular situation, we were able in an hour, that's been 60 minutes, to identify the latents on the paper and the letter that has been sent to the prosecutor, and we were able in 60 minutes, I will repeat again, to identify who was the perpetrator and the sender of the letter. There were no anthrax, it was just some powder, but we were able immediately with our techniques to identify the perpetrators and let the other law enforcement agencies to intervene and to block immediately. So we transformed something that was an intelligence as like a situation in a real evidence available for the court. So here essentially it's a criminological approach to the scene. So we consider any kind of event since the beginning as a site-sensitive exploitation. That's mean we approach the scene thinking anytime who are the protagonists, what happened, when it happened, where and why. And anytime those questions, the famous 5 Ws, are in our mind in every step we proceed in order to do not waste our effort and do not waste any kind of intel or evidence that we can collect. So this is the difference, for example, for a standard team without the proper garment to protect them, not only themselves, but also the evidences, and our suite that will protect for the contaminated environment and also from the contamination that ourselves we can make on the ground. For example, this is a very well-known pictures about the investigation that has been made in Syria about the use of chemical weapon, the alleged use of chemical weapons. So an investigation very, very, very well conducted. I mean, they were a professional inspectors and investigators, but it was a success on the investigation, but really something that was not very well to the international level, because they were not respecting some standard that we'll discuss later, and some other situation that were not allowing this kind of investigation to passing to the next level. That's been the international court. So from the beginning, okay, we have to document the scene and the evidence that we are taking and how we are taking. And for example, just some little and basic situation like the evaluation of the general state of the places as we see when we arrived, the climatic condition and the temperatures, for example, that if they are not important for a street shooting, for example, are extremely important for a chemical compound that respect to the climatic condition and temperatures. They can be liquid, they can be gases, they can be even solid and so on. So that's something interesting. Presence of visible traces, footwear and footprints, for example, is something that for us are extremely valuable. For the army, for example, the presence of visible traces are intel in order to identify that someone is passing all over, passing around in some way, examining. That's been something that can be useful for them to know if there is an ambush or something like that. For us, those intel are interesting to become evidences. That's mean to collect the footwear, to collect the footprints and so on, in order to give a name to the perpetrators, to give a face, to identify correctly and so on. And after this, that's the biggest things and the most important and valuable and absolutely is critical, the situation, it's a legal chain of custody. Who is Italian right now is on all the newspaper and all in the media. For example, the murder in Garlasco, where some evidence has been taken in a correct way, some evidence is not even valuable, some evidence is missed, some evidence has to be re-examined and so on. So if you maintain a correct chain of custody of the materials, and the chain of custody, it means not the steps along the package that has to be done, but also the way in order to maintain the correct storage of the package and blah, 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 okay, you can have something that can be re-examined again after 10 years, for example. Okay, so something that is still evaluable, and still valid also after years. And here, identify and the collection evidence in a contaminated environment is possible or not possible? Yes, it is. It's possible to collect DNA. It's possible to collect latents and fingerprint with the proper garment and with the proper machine. Obviously, it's given some challenge and some issues. That's mean, which is the risk of contaminated evidences, latent or swab. That's mean that you have to maintain a proper way in order to let them go out from the contaminated scene. Then, for example, we can think about something radiological. We have a degradation of DNA, a very high degradation depending on which kind of radiation we are speaking about, alpha, bravo, delta, and gamma. Sorry, alpha, bravo, and gamma. And so those are some steps. And the level of, for example, chemical agent, how is degrading DNA, or the level of biological, how is contaminating the DNA in order to be involved, and so on. But we can have some we starting in order to have this kind of database, this kind of evaluations. Then we have another big issue, that is the analysis to the contaminated DNA, because the analysis is a machine, it's machine done, and we have a machine that has been have to be dedicated for this kind of exam, because obviously it has to be decontaminated after the analysis of DNA and so on. And then we have a big issue, that is the attribution of chemical used for attacks. For example, a chemical product is a chemical product. So depending on other data that we are analysis on the chemical, we can be sure or we can assume that some chemical has been produced in a part of the world and so on. It's something is easier, for example, for radiological material, because it's kind of a signature for every radiological compound, but it's not so simple for the chemical, for example. And then we have something that is nobody always thinks about, but that's the problem, for example, that we had in Syria, that we have the diplomatic and prosecution issues. If we are speaking in Italy, okay, the puppet master is the law enforcement and the national law. But if we are speaking about international issues, international prosecution, we have to respect international procedures and international law. So essentially, and this is the first point, it's a bilateral consultation. I mean, nobody is allowed to enter in a state in order to make their own investigation. So everything has to be deliberated or by UN or by other agencies, okay, but has to be decided firstly in a diplomatic level. Then we have the national procedures that can be good in Italy versus international procedures that can be accepted all over. Just an example for everybody is the latent. The latent, for example, for national procedures, that's been Italian procedures, they need to have a 15-point minimum, a minimum of 15 points to be acceptable for the court. In the US, for example, they need a minimum of 2 plus the voice of an expert in fingerprints and latent. So as you can see, it's completely different, the system of analysis of latent. Inspection investigation has to have under international mandate. Even OPCW cannot be in a foreign country without a specific and international mandate. That's why it's part of the UN. Then we need to have a certified control sample. That's mean a legal possession study and creation of samples. We are speaking about something that theoretically is a weapon and has been, and we have a convention that say we shouldn't have. So how we had a legal possession and we can compare a chemical weapon to another if theoretically we do not have them? So there are some other issues and things to do in a legal way in order to make this kind of comparison. The instruments calibration, that's we have a plan in a lab that is specifically identify the calibration of the instrument. We had issues just, for example, for the Velox to calculate the speed in Italy with the instrument and the calibration of the instrument. We had, and we will have also in the future, anytime different system. So you can imagine if we have to take an international trial against someone. So calibration of instrument is mandatory, as is essential for a good result. And directly connected to the instrument calibration, there is an analytic plan of the laboratory, how they start from since they receive the sample to examine it to the end of the result, and how this sample has been modified, for example, or how has been analyzed, which method has been used to analyze the springs and so on, if they will be destroyed or not, and blah, blah, blah. And something that is really extremely important, and we have seen, for example, for the attempt that has been done against in London, for example, in UK, about the poisoning of with Novichok, which characteristics or marker have been ascertained that the hazardous material can be originated by some lab and by some country. Okay, that's mean, how can I say that this kind of chemical material or chemical compound has been originated by Italy, for example, by an Italian laboratory, or by an Italy project and so on? How can I say? So I have to transform sometimes what my colleague said before, some intel that we received by military information, maybe even restricted or even secrets, and they have to be translated and they have to become an evidence. So we have to reveal maybe sometimes some reserved information or intel that we have. So it's really a delicate matter, this one too. Then we have to use the scientific terminology internationally accepted. That's mean if we are speaking about Novichok, that should be something, or had been in the past something secret. So how you use a terminology that is say has been used the Novichok. Who knows your Novichok? I mean, I'm inside the court, so you cannot say to me has been used the Novichok. I'm a judge, and if you are speaking Novichok, I just understand the term as it is, but I do not understand what there is behind, what is doing, and so on. So you have to be as much clear as possible using words that are scientifically accepted all over the world. And another big issue, that is a CBRNE database that can be used and shared between the law enforcement agencies, because every nation has its own, but often is not splitted because it's on the reserved or restricted or even secret level, because it's speaking about something. There have been, even in Europe, that Europol was trying to create this kind of database with much more data as possible, but was not able to create, but all the countries, they were not inserted. The data, they were considering restricted by their country, restricted because of a court event, or military strategies, or whatever else. So even here, sometimes we don't know something till someone will say that there is. And also between some sharing of intel between countries, there is something that is not so open mind accepted, this kind of things. So sometimes we don't know the level, also because, speaking about chemical, for example, any country shouldn't still study this kind of matter, for example, or biological. There are a lot of threats that say that you have not to develop much more studies on this kind of matter. So it's an issue that sometimes can be considered. Okay, I finished my presentation. I was staying on time. And if you have any question, please feel free to address to me. Okay.